Linear depreciation. So we have a word problem here. I know that's your favorite. Let's read it. A piece of machinery was purchased for $7,200 in 2019, and it depreciates linearly by $1,050 per year. Write an expression giving the value of the machinery in terms of time in years after 2019. And then there's more parts. We'll get to those in just a moment. Anytime you get a word problem, you should read it multiple times. Read it over and over and over again to make sure you have a feel for what you're asked to do. So let's read it again. A piece of machinery was purchased for $7,200 in 2019, and it depreciates linearly by $1,050 per year. Write an expression giving the value of the machinery in terms of time and years after 2019. So now let's read just the question part again. They want us to write an expression giving the value of the machinery in terms of time and years after 2019. So let's break this into pieces. We want value in terms of time. So we want value in terms of time. And again, I'm repeating this over and over and over again, just trying to break it down in my head. So value in terms of time, but maybe you've heard something similar. You might have heard maybe like Y in terms of X, maybe. You've heard of that wording? So value in terms of time. Okay, we can compare it to something we've heard before, Y in terms of X. So maybe like my value is going to be like the Y value, maybe. And then in terms of time, Y in terms of X, so maybe X is time. When we're looking at this, Y in terms of X, we could write that as points, right? Our points usually go X, comma, Y. So the Y is value. The X is what? Time. So we're going to be looking at points that go X, comma, Y, but Y in terms of X, value in terms of time. X, it represents time. So the X coordinate, the input will be time, and the output will be value. And this makes sense, right? Think about it. Y depends on X. Value depends on time. Okay? Because we buy this piece of machinery, the longer we have it, the less it's worth. That's what depreciation means, right? So value depends on the time you've had it and used it. Hopefully that's reasonable to you. Okay. So let's point out one more thing. And we're looking at time, but we're saying not just any time, time in years after 2019. So when did we buy this thing? Well, we bought this piece of machinery when? In 2019. So that's like the starting point. That's like time equals 0. Okay, so let the year 2019 represent t equals 0. Let's just go piece by piece and we're going to write points. We know we're looking at a line because it says depreciates linearly, line. So we're going to try to come up with an equation of a line. We actually have two forms for lines, right? We have y equals mx plus b. We also have y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We also have the standard form and general form, ax plus by equals c. And you can also ax plus by minus d equals 0. But these are the two that are maybe the most helpful, that we use the most probably. But you notice both of them have a slope, so we probably need to figure out a slope and maybe a point. This has point slope. Okay, so we're going to take the first sentence and we're going to break it into pieces. A piece of machinery was purchased for $7,200 in 2019. Can we take that and break it into a time and a value? Read it again. A piece of machinery was purchased for $7,200 in 2019. We bought it for $7,200 in 2019. You see one of them is a time and one is a value. So the time is 2019, but we said we're starting at 2019. We're going to let t be 0 there, so 0. And then purchased for this amount, well, isn't that part the value? Okay, so time, comma, value. That's why I'm putting them in this order. 0, 7,200. Let's look at the next piece. This machine depreciates linearly by $1,050 per year. Okay. Depreciates linearly. So linear means line. That part's easy. We've done that already. Depreciates means it loses value, right? Let's read this again. Depreciates linearly, or loses value at a linear rate is what this is telling us, right? So it loses value, depreciates by $1,050 per year. We lose $1,050 in value every year. Okay, so maybe that's like a change in value with respect to time. Does that seem reasonable? Read it again. Depreciates linearly, so the value is decreasing by how much? Value in terms of a time period, right? So when we talk about slope, we use M, and sometimes you'll say rise over run or things like that, but maybe you also say change in Y over what? Change in X, right? But I don't have a Y. My Y has been replaced with value, right? So slope, for our purposes, will be change in value divided by a change in time. Let's read it again. Depreciates linearly by this amount. Well, isn't this the change in the value? And depreciates means the value is decreasing, right? So the change in value is actually a negative $1,050. Time period is 1 year. So your slope will be negative 1,050. Okay. So we're going to write an equation of a line. We can use either form. If you recognize this is a special point, this is 0, comma b. This is the y, or the y-intercept. In our case, it's the v for value intercept. If you recognize that, your problem's almost done, right? You would do, normally we have y equals mx plus b, but we have value in time, so we're going to say v equals mt plus b. If we do that, we can see that 0, comma b is 7,200. So this is my b. And we found the slope already, right? So v is negative 1,050t plus 7,200. That's one way to do it. Maybe you didn't recognize that we had the y-intercept. If you didn't, that's okay. You could do v minus v1 equals m times t minus t1. And you plug in the point t1, v1, which we found as 0, 7,200. So you would get v minus the value or the y coordinate, 7,200 equals negative 1,050 times t minus 0. And then we distribute here. So v minus 7,200 equals negative 1,050t. Because 1,050 times 0 is 0. And then you add your 7,200 to both sides. You see we end up with the same thing? Okay, perfect. Let's continue with part B. How much will the machine be worth in the year 2022? Okay, up here we said let 2019 represent the beginning, time equals 0. So if we're at 2022, how much time has passed since 2019? So we're just going to do a simple subtraction, right? We're going to do really 2022 minus 2019, or 22 minus 19. And we see we get 3 years. So we are really thinking about t equal 3, right? Use t equal 3, because that's the number of years since 2019. Let's go back through this again. Remember, every time you're doing a word problem, especially if you're nervous, read it over and over and over again. How much will the machine be worth at a certain time? So do you see value in time? How much is value? We're looking for the output. They've given us the input. Does that make sense? How much represents a value, and they gave us a time period. So we're going to use t equal 3, and we are going to find the value. So v, we said earlier, was this equation, right? So now we're going to take this t right here, and we're going to put 3 in place of that t. Okay, and you type that in your calculator. You're going to get 4050. Okay. So the machine will be worth $4,050 in the year 2022. I think there's another part here. Let's see. When will the machine be worth $900? Okay, so I'm going to write the equation again just so I don't have to keep scrolling back and forth. Read it again. When will the machine be worth $900? You see a value and a time? When, and here's how much it's worth. So this is the value. When means time, right? So in this example, when means we are trying to find t, right? And worth $900 means they've told us the value is now 900. Do you see we're solving it the other way now? Okay, so we're going to replace this v right here with 900. So 900 equals negative 1050t plus 7,200. We want t by itself, so we're going to subtract 7,200 from both sides, right? Does that make sense? So we get negative 1050t. And here we get negative 6300. Y'all check. Does that make sense? And I want the coefficient of t to be 1. So I need to divide. And we end up with 6 years. Okay, well that's 6 years since we bought the thing, right? So 6 years since 2019. So that means in the year 2025. Okay, one more question. When will the machine be worthless? So again, when, we're asking for when, which means we are looking for time. And worthless means what about the value? It's worthless. It has no worth, right? So the value is 0. So we know v was negative 1050t plus 7,200, right? But we now want the value to be 0. Value is 0. Plug in 0 in here and we're going to solve. 0 equals solving for t, right? So I'm going to move this over here. So I get 1050t equals 7,200. Then I'm going to divide by the coefficient of my t. And we end up with, I'm going to do a decimal approximation, 6.857 years. So it was 2019 plus 6.8. And so the year is, it says 2025.86. So between the year 2025 and 2026. So sometime during this year, before 2026, it will be worthless. Okay?